Hi, this is Jane. Welcome back this week. I want to talk to particularly people that are blogging this week. You're writing blog posts, and maybe you're having the same experiences that I had, especially when I first started. Now, I want to talk today about the passive voice and those mysterious Yoast lights. Um, Passive voice, for some reason, it's a little bit hard to get across to people until you know the rules about it, and then it becomes very simple. But just at first glance, it can seem a little vague. What am I supposed to do? Let me preface this by saying that over a year ago, when I started my blog, one of the things I learned is that blog writing, it has quite a few differences from what I call book writing. It's just different. But everything isn't different. And no matter what you're writing, the passive voice is not the best place to put most of your writing. It does have a couple of honestly appropriate places, and we'll talk about that at the end. But it's we're going to talk about this. Um, I want to talk about Yoast for just a minute because if you're blogging, maybe Yoast is a plugin, and most of you know that. Um, if you don't, you might want to look into it if you're just starting out. I started with a blogging coach, and he built me a wonderful website, taught me all about how to function with it, and one of the plugins that he loaded into it was Yoast. And the purpose of Yoast is to analyze your posts and your pages for basically two things: readability, and it has a way of scoring that, and there's a lot of information available to it, and you can get mad at that or you can use it to improve your writing skills. And then there's also the analysis that it does for your SEO, and we're not going to get into that. That's a whole other thing, and I know a lot more about English than I do SEO at this point. So but the readability side, one of the things that it does deal with in there is passive voice, and it will call you on it if you've got more than a certain percentage of your sentences in passive voice. Now, it recognizes that there are some instances where it is appropriate, and if you do some research in their helps pages through your dashboard, you'll find out that they admit that sometimes it'll throw you a false check on that, meaning that it will call something as passive that really isn't. And so that's very helpful to read into that and find out Yoast specific how that works, and what you can do with that, and how you know the difference. But what I want to talk about is truly the English grammar side of things. What is this with passive and active verbs, and what difference does it make? Well, I think first we need to start with just some simple definitions. And I always go to dictionary.com, and they give you a very good example in there. And the very heart of it, the difference, a passive verb is one, a passive sentence is one where the subject is being acted upon rather than doing the action itself. And a sample, I just used the sample that they used in there because it's just, why reinvent the wheel? The ball was thrown by the pitcher. The subject is the ball, but it wasn't the one that was doing the action. The pitcher is the one that did the action. So it's passive, as opposed to active, where the subject, the who or what, is doing the action, and the active sentence there would be the pitcher threw the ball, and the pitcher is the subject, and threw is the verb, and the subject is the one who took that action, so that's active. Now, we can look at that just a little bit closer look. Yes, what I am saying, I can hear somebody, is that as you write, you do need to be aware of your subjects and verbs. That's really not asking too much. That's pretty simple stuff, and it's really going to help you, because the more active voice you use, it's it just it says it better. It's more concise. It's much clearer, direct. It can even be dramatic at times, and it hooks the reader much better and more deeply than the passive voice. Um, Conciseness is just so important. It's important with books too, but with books and narrative writing and that, it's a whole other world over there. And that kind of writing, sometimes you have a character, for example, that just kind of lives in a passive kind of state, and so it's appropriate to bend those rules some for writing like that. But when you're writing on a blog post or a page on your website, you want to be concise, and especially, particularly in the world we live today, where there are so many devices that we all have. You know, if someone's trying to keep up with your blog post or find out something from one of your pages or posts on their cell phone, that's a small screen. Even the largest models, that's a small screen to be trying to scroll down through a post and find what they're looking for. And so a concise writing style just makes that so much easier. And one of the whole things about blog writing anyway is that you want them to stay on your page. You want them to be with you. And so the way you write that post is very much part of determining whether people will stay with you or whether they'll move on, they'll give up, or they just, the attention span of readers on the internet, on blogs, it's it's fractional, it's small. And so concise writing, direct, you have to be there, and you need to know how to do that. So the big question, and I have friends that are doing blogs also, and I get phone calls, I get text messages. Can you help me with this? It's saying that everything is passive and I don't know how to change it. Well, it's very simple to change it when you just know the few little things that we just talked about. Um, there's four little steps that I go through to just proof through my paper, through my writing, and knock out. One of the things that I think people tend to talk in passive voice sometimes, especially if you're just kind of thinking out loud and you're not trying to be direct. You're just friends, think in front of each other. You just kind of share whatever's coming up, and it's proven that we write differently than we speak, and we need to clean up. It's great. You can dictate a first draft of a book, but there's the editing process that goes through and elevates that up into a better book form, if you will, a better way of saying things that hook the reader. It's great just to get the information out, and the same is true when writing your first draft of a post. Just get it out there. But then, if you're using Yoast, let it go through and help you clean it up a little bit. It's a great editing tool if you'll use it. It won't proof for you, but it will help you edit. It'll help you do some of these harder elements of grammar that normally you just don't. Writing in the active voice, also another thing that I'm aware of in it, is that it makes you be bold. It makes you, the writer, be on top of your game. You're not. You don't want to. If you're selling a service or your skills, you don't want to sound. You don't want to come off like, well, I think I know what I'm doing. No, you want to tell your watchers, your readers, your listeners, no, this is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is what I can do for you. And you can, and you do that already, but you need to be confident. So writing in the active voice will get you confident about what you're saying and doing, and it will also help you cut out the stuff that maybe doesn't need to be said. You know, an example comes to mind. If you're writing about some healthcare supplement, a vitamin or something, and if you're in a network marketing situation, there are things that you legally cannot say about that. And watching this, the passive active right there will help you stay within your guidelines, because where you're not confident, you need to say something else or not say anything at all about that area. So, how do you change it? Well, the first step is to look at your sentence and determine what's the subject. Who or what is doing the action? What's the subject? That's first thing. Simple. Number two, identify the verb or the action in your sentence. What is it? What's being done? The third thing is to look at those two and then compare. Is the subject the one that's doing the action? If it is, then it's not passive, it's active. If the subject is not doing the action, then it is passive. And the fourth step is you need to think of how you can rewrite that thought and change it up to where the subject is the one taking the action. Let's look at an example, because this weekend is, some people call it Easter Sunday, some prefer Resurrection Sunday, but Sunday's it, and this is Thursday afternoon. So my example of a passive sentence is, Easter eggs are often dyed by parents for their kids. The subject is eggs. The verb is are dyed. Now, is the subject eggs doing the action? No, the eggs are not doing the dyeing, the parents are. So therefore, this is in the passive voice, and so we need to rewrite it. So to rewrite it, we're going to put the subject doing the action. So we're going to say, our new active sentence is, parents often dye Easter eggs. What's the subject? Parents. What's the verb? Dye. The parents dye. That's active. It's very simple. When you break it down into those structures like that, it's very simple to fix your blog posting to where you get that passive voice down under the percentage of your total words where Yoast wants it. And it really does improve your writing. It really is a very useful plug-in. And I started out with great frustration with it at times over certain things. And now I use it and it just guides me, and it just, lots of times, today I don't have to make as many corrections as I did when I started. We'll put it that way. It's just really great. Now, there are some times, there's a couple of instances when a passive voice is the appropriate choice, and that's why even in Yoast they allow you a certain percentage of them, because they recognize that too. And one instance when it is appropriate is when, in the context of your writing, it isn't known or declared who does the action. For example, the bedroom window was broken out sometime after midnight. No one knows who broke the window. So in that instance, that passive voice is perfectly appropriate. Another example is, I just used a sentence that I just made this one up. 1953, the year I was born, a conference was called to decide what to do with Korea at the end of the war. The doers of the action, who called the conference, it's not important. The point of it is, that was my birth year, and this is what happened. Another instance where a passive voice is totally fine for you to use is when the action is actually more important than who did it. Sometimes in your writing, what took place is more important than who did it. An example is, An active sentence would be, Joseph Priestley discovered oxygen in 1774. That's active. Joseph Priestley is the subject and discovered is the verb. So that makes it active. But the important thing, possibly in your writing about this, is your topic is oxygen. It's not really about Joseph Priestley. It's about the element oxygen, and you're writing a piece about that. So therefore, it would be it would be better said to use the sentence, a passive sentence, that says oxygen was discovered in 1774 by Joseph Priestley. That is passive, but it puts the focus on the topic. And that's important. And that comes up in blog posting frequently. So it's good to know those. That's pretty much Jane's summary on passive and active voice for bloggers and for writers in general too. But I geared it toward bloggers because it just comes up all the time, especially if you're trying to work with Yoast. The little lights over there, I call them the traffic lights of the internet. You know, it just, sometimes they can just frustrate you, and passive voice is one that I get calls on all the time. What do? I don't even know what this is. What? And so anyway, I hope this has been helpful to you. It's just a fun little look at grammar and usage. Get out there this week and write, you guys. Let me know what you're working on. If anybody needs any services, any editing services, please let me know. I would be glad to edit for you. I am happy to. I enjoy editing blog posts or books or whatever you're working on. I enjoy doing that. Been doing it for a long time. So contact me. Just email me. It's on the website. Have a great week and get your writing done. Thank you so much. God bless.